Welcome to Sundarban Nature Reserve at the delta of the Ganges.
I spent the COVID-19 curfew reading The Hungry Tide by Amitav Ghosh, recommended by a good friend. The Sundarbans, described in this book, is one of the most magic habitats you probably, like me, have never heard about before. As you will soon realize, its incredible environmental importance was sufficient an excuse to explore it in person. Once the COVID travel restrictions were eased, Michal, my partner and expert for all things Indian, and I boarded the plane to Delhi. Not surprisingly, we came down with the virus and isolated ourselves in our hotel room, sustaining on delicious takeout food. Freshly recovered, we resumed our travels, eventually arriving in vibrant Kolkata. After exploring it in depth, while staying in one of its best hotels at dirt cheap COVID rates, we headed to Madzibari. Here we met Ajay, our guide, and together we joined the crowds boarding this hectic ferry, which is the lifeline connecting the mainland to Gosaba, one of the few inhabited islands of this vast archipelago. From here we proceeded on board a private boat to our rustic backpackers lodge located in a lovingly tended garden on Sajelia Island. Mangrove forests are found in coastal intertidal zones at tropical and subtropical latitudes. Covering some 10,000 square kilometers, the Sundarbans is the largest mangrove forest in the world. It straddles the borders between India and Bangladesh in the delta formed by the confluence of the Ganges, Brahmaputra and Meghna rivers in the Bay of Bengal. From this rowing boat, guided by Ajay, I can better show you the mangroves, a form of adaptation that has appeared by convergent evolution in different plant families. Mangroves flourish in waterlogged intertidal zones and thrive on brackish and even salty water. They have special mechanisms to filter or get rid of salt and to breathe oxygen through the special air roots you see here. The daily and monthly tides lead to periodic submersion of these roots and other parts of the mangroves. Some species, like the ones you see here, grow in prop roots, which keep them raised out of the water. The dense network of mangrove roots confers them with great stability and protects coastlines from erosion. Importantly, mangroves have the highest area rates of carbon sequestration compared with any other terrestrial or marine ecosystem. Yet another good reason to protect them in this age of climate change caused by anthropogenic emission of carbon dioxide. The only way to tour the Sundarbans is on water, and we spent the next 2 days from well before sunrise to well after sunset on board of the large tourist boat we rented. We collected our permit from the park headquarters and headed into the intricate network of rivers, estuaries and tidal waterways. We visited just as COVID restrictions were lifted, but this huge fleet of ghost tourist boats can give you an idea of the scale of mass tourism in normal times. Animals here are adapted to wet and saline conditions. If you want to live here, you'd better first obtain your swimming certificate, as do tigers, monkeys and most other animals. Spotted deer were the most common big mammals we saw. We also observed many monkeys and even one swimming across the river. Unfortunately, I wasn't fast enough to film it. Sundarban's avian biodiversity is stunning, and birds can be easily observed at close range from a boat. We spotted most of the 7 different species of kingfishers that live here. Plenty of raptors are perched on the trees alongside the water. The mud is very rich with all sorts of life, a real feast for the many waders and waterfowl that feed on them. And here swims a crocodile. Crocs are rather abundant in the water and on the muddy banks, and pose a serious hazard to fishermen. We saw also other reptiles, this water monitor hugging a branch and the snake slithering through the mud. These are mudskippers, fish that spend some of their time out of the water. We were particularly fortunate to see the rare and endangered Irrawaddy dolphins that live here in brackish water. The Bengal tiger is the most iconic predator of the Sundarbans. It often remains very elusive, and in spite of all our efforts, we only managed to see here some tiger pug marks in the mud. The tiger footage you see here was filmed by Asan Ranthambore, a tiger reserve 1500 kilometers to the west. The nature reserves, both on the Indian and the Bangladeshi part, were first and foremost established to protect tigers. A single tiger requires a habitat of about 10 square kilometers. Thousands of square kilometers of pristine forest were therefore set aside and protected, creating a safe haven not only for tigers but for all other fauna and flora. The tiger is thus the main guardian of the Sundarbans. Tigers are, however, also a major threat to people who make their living on the water and in the forest. This is one of the few places in the world where humans are part of the food chain, and every year dozens of people lose their lives being eaten by tigers. This is Bonbibi, the legendary lady and guardian spirit of the forest, venerated by Hindus and Muslims alike, who call upon her before heading into the forest. These fences were installed to keep tigers away from villages. They are, however, not impermeable, and the day before our visit a tiger was spotted in the village. This is a cage used to trap them when they enter a village. Traditionally, much of the livelihood of people here came from the mangroves. They were either woodcutters, honey collectors, or caught crab and fish. Woodcutting is no longer allowed, and the other activities require permits. Regions where the ocean and land meet will suffer most from climate change. Both the rise of the sea level and the increased potency and incidence of storms severely affect these regions and their inhabitants. By taking on the brunt of the storms, this vast mangrove area shields the hinterland from some of the worst weather effects. These storms, however, cause massive damage to island infrastructure, humans, fauna and flora. The delicate balance of salinity, so important for plants and animals in this habitat, is very sensitive to the rise of the sea level on the one hand and the reduction of freshwater input from rivers on the other. A further major threat to this fragile ecosystem will be the new Rampal coal power station under construction in Bangladesh. This power station is just 14 kilometers from the reserve, and the coal required for its running will be transported on the already busy naval routes crossing the Sundarbans. On our final morning here, we explored the enchanting villages near our lodge on Sajelia Island, one of the few densely populated and intensively farmed isles. As you can see, the landscape is dominated by lush rice paddies. The dam, erected to protect the fields from the sea, is, as described in The Hungry Tide, occasionally breached by mighty storms. The seawater recedes eventually, but it can take years for the salinity to be washed out of the soil. Next to each house is a pond that fills up with rainwater during the monsoon and is used for aquaculture, to farm fish, and for other domestic uses. Here you can see how cow dung is processed for fuel. We were sad to leave this magic place, our lovely lodge, and in particular Ajay, our expert guide, who enabled us to understand the Sundarbans in depth. On our way back to Kolkata, we had ample time to reflect on our amazing adventures here and to contemplate the complex interactions between humans and the environment in this unique ecosystem.